What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Now, believe it or not, it's been a full 3 years since the fiasco between Disney, Marvel, and Sony, where Spider-Man Tom Holland's iteration was pulled out of the MCU, at least temporarily, while they figured out a renegotiation for how they would share the character. Now, long since then, you don't have to worry about, at this point, Spider-Man ever being pulled back out of the MCU. Well, we'll talk about that in the distant future. There's just too much money to be made on both sides of the aisle for Sony and Marvel with a Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for as long as the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going. But no contract lasts forever, and it appears as though we've reached the next term of the negotiations between Marvel and Disney. Today, a huge update coming from an industry insider and fellow YouTuber that they are making headway on that. Tom Holland's contract to follow. We're going to talk about what movies this may include outside of Spider-Man 4 and the obvious major crossovers like Secret Wars and Avengers Kang Dynasty. There's some other films that he has a real likely chance of showing up in, and that's probably at the heart of these negotiations. We're breaking down everything, the brand new deal for Spider-Man between Sony and Disney. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button. We do daily Marvel content at the channel, and that's all we do. Everything from official Easter egg breakdowns, trailers, and reviews to the occasional industry insider report and everything in between. So if that sort of thing's for you, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. That will automatically enter you to win our ongoing PS5 giveaway. If you want, stick around to the end of the video. We'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there. Now, before today's update, and about a month or two ago, back when they did D23, there was a report circulating from industry insiders that Tom Holland's deal was actually already underway, and there were several places that Sony wanted to see him show up outside of the normal Spider-Man 4 and obviously for the MCU, the two big crossovers. And if you kept Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe long enough to make it to the Fantastic Four and Secret Wars, especially now with Tom Hardy's Venom symbiote, or at least a piece of him, stuck in the MCU. This is all obviously headed for the symbiote and black suit storyline that eventually Reed Richards is going to blast off circa 1984's Secret Wars. But long before there are several spots in the MCU that could really call for a Tom Holland or Spider-Man appearance. Number one, mainly the Fantastic Four, where during Amazing Spider-Man 1, he crossed over with that team several times in the comics as well. There are so many storylines, so many great interactions between Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, and now with them in the MCU, it's a likely place for a cameo, as well as the upcoming Daredevil Born Again series, which we're hearing may lead directly into Spider-Man 4 and a matchup with the Kingpin, having him show up towards the finale or the end of that series. Well, it would really go ahead and cement what's probably going to be an all-time classic in an 18-episode new Daredevil MCU show, by putting Spider-Man, the top of the street-level hero gang, right up in the middle of that, because as Kevin Feige said, that's who's leading the street-level heroes, and Daredevil is obviously at the forefront of that as well. Today's update, coming from Grace Randolph, seems to indicate that Disney and Sony are very close to finishing that new Spider-Man deal. Then they'll work on the deal for Tom Holland for Spider-Man 4, Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars. And as I said moments ago, those three franchises, they're the least news part of this story. Amy Pascal, longtime Spider-Man executive over at Sony, literally was confirming Spider-Man 4 days after the initial release of No Way Home. And from the higher-ups like Kevin Feige over at Marvel, Spider-Man 4 has always been coming. There's just no release date yet. And if you're wondering why in the world we went through D23 and San Diego Comic-Con and they have not announced a brand new Spider-Man movie now almost a year since Spider-Man No Way Home came out, it's because they need to get through this paperwork, they need to get through the deal, then get through the deal with Tom Holland for the places they want him to show up, then we'll get an announcement. Speaking of which, it was rumored literally 2 weeks ago that Spider-Man 4 would look to get a release date sometime in the summer of 2024, and I didn't run the story here at the channel. Almost everyone around me did. I gave pause for a second because if you look at the current release slate for Marvel Studios, where Blade was at the end of last year, which has now been delayed into 2024, leaves an enormous gap between when the Marvels come out in July, summer of 2023, and when Captain America New World Order comes out in May of 2024. We're talking about almost a full year. And while yes, they could go ahead and release it whenever they want because this is Sony's call, In 2024, you have May 3rd for New World Order, Thunderbolts on July 26th, Blade on September 6th, and Deadpool on November 8th. They were calling for a July or June release date for Spider-Man 4, which would put 3 Marvel movies in 3 months after having no Marvel movies for almost a year. And it does not take a scientist to figure out, guys, just look at the enormous gap on the schedule. Spider-Man 4 is going to come out sometime between when the Marvels are released on July 28th, 2023, and when New World Order is released in May of 2024. Almost a full year. You can count on Spider-Man 4 being wedged somewhere between those. And if you're saying, hey, well, there's not enough time, they'd have to go to shooting next year, how would that all work out? There's plenty of time. They've literally been working on that script, working on the details, working on the project development and pre-pro since Spider-Man No Way Home all the way back in 2021. Kevin Feige said it himself, only to confirm it for fans so we didn't have any fear of him leaving the MCU, that they were already working on the 4th film. So they didn't have to have the paperwork done, have the fine print worked out until they worked it out themselves. It sounds like they got the plan in line, now they're moving to the contracting, and I expect, again, Spider-Man 4 to show up in the middle of those 2 dates. Because also, you have to keep in mind, Sony has to do a Spider-Man movie every 2 years, same as it was with Fox and the X-Men, or thereabouts, something along that time schedule, or the rights end up bouncing back to Disney and Marvel. They'll get the rights back if you don't keep doing movies with their characters. That's how those character agreements have always worked, but please do not get your hopes up that somehow Sony's going to screw this up, schedule Spider-Man to be released in February of 2024, miss the deadline by 60 days, and all of a sudden Marvel and Disney will get Spider-Man back. As much as we'd all love that, there's no chance of that happening. There's as little chance of that happening as Marvel or Disney ever buying back Spider-Man, which I know was heavily rumored last year, some astronomical prices, or maybe it's been 2 years at this point. That just won't happen. Spider-Man is way too far a lucrative IP for Sony and makes up a majority of their IP, and it's not just their film studio house. They've still got films like Kraven, Madam Web, and others in the pipeline, which the pandemic, all the way back in San Diego Comic-Con 2019, there was a quote from Kevin Feige that said that Spider-Man is the one that could travel the universe, and it looked as though Sony's plan was to have Tom Holland's Spider-Man find his way into Andrew Garfield's or Tobey Maguire's universe, something along those lines, to fill in a Spider-Man for the upcoming Sinister Six they're building that still doesn't have one. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen all the rumors as we've reported on them at the channel that indeed Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire would be back for cameos in Secret Wars when we get to the end of the multiverse saga, and fans have even agitated and kept their fingers crossed that eventually Sony will happening. But if it was up to me, I'd pay him whatever he wanted and have him come back to be the Spider-Man in the Spider-Man-less Sonyverse. But we know that Sony is trying to build towards something huge against the advice of Kevin Feige, and in a recent video covering what's supposedly a leaked part of their slate, it looks as though Sony's trying to build towards a Spider-Geddon film. Now, you don't go and do a Spider-Geddon film, an ultimate crowning achievement of your Spider-Verse. So biggest Spider-Man is Tom Holland. So when I said about 5 minutes ago in this video about a one-way trip, Tom Holland out, crossing over into the Sonyverse, if Tom Holland is going to show up anywhere outside of the MCU, it's going to be in that Spider-Geddon movie. But with the way Sony botched something as easy as figuring out how Adrian Toomes would show up in the Morbiusverse when they could have just used a multiversal variant, they instead did something that really didn't even make sense with their own film in No Way Home. I do not have the highest of hope for them to pull this all off. What I will say is Tom Holland will not be the MCU Spider-Man forever, but he will be for quite some time. And we may have to wait until D23 or San Diego Comic-Con for some sort of announcement like this, but keep in mind that's not really where Sony would announce this. They normally do Spider-Man announcements at their own presentations, and if they don't go ahead and prioritize one soon, well, of course, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, Variety, one of the Hollywood trades is going to get to the story whenever the deal is done, and we'll cover it here at the channel. Guys, let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments about keeping Tom Holland and where you want to see him show up in the MCU outside of Spider-Man 4. I think Daredevil Born Again is an obvious choice, and he'll obviously be in Secret Wars, but let me know all your thoughts down below quickly. Let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. We're still giving away a PlayStation 5 every 20,000 subscribers. The next milestone is 1 million, which we are headlong into. Get easily hit by this month's end or next. So if you want to be entered to win, all you have to do, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. That will automatically enter you to win our ongoing PS5 giveaway. Because it's truly random, The more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. All winners will be announced at the end of videos the same way we're doing here. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on, and as always, if you liked today's video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. Find me a couple of places, Instagram and Twitter at IamFires. You can also find me on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Apple, iTunes, under the name AllFires. And while I sincerely appreciate you checking my music out, thanks for checking this channel out. Stick around, we'll be posting again real soon.